What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Before we get into today's episode, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, StarStock. You've heard me talk about them in the past, and now the website has been launched for a few weeks, and it looks really, really great. One of the best parts about the site is the fact that you can just send the cards in, and you don't have to worry about making any listings or taking any pictures. You just send the cards in, and they basically do all the work for you, which is really awesome. Another great part about the company is actually their website. So I'm somebody that uses the internet pretty frequently, and one of my pet peeves is when the site doesn't optimize for mobile. So StarStock's site does do this when you're on mobile versus desktop, and it's super easy to navigate. Now you can go to the website and register as a seller right from the site. You don't have to do any contact. And soon I've heard they're going to be getting some graded cards up on the website as well. So you can go to starstock.com to check out that. And then you can also go follow them on Twitter and Instagram at StarStockMarket. Now let's get into the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I'm your host. So I had like a string of tweets typed out that I never sent because I felt like I wasn't expressing my thoughts on the concept maybe as well as I wanted to. So from a content perspective or from a seller perspective, I think one of the kind of the common themes or theories of how people are going to get into sports cards are it's going to be people, watching the game or watching highlights and then going and buying the card. And I think there will be people that will do that, but I've also been kind of thinking that potentially the barrier of entry into sports cards is a little bit more complicated than we're all than we all are theorizing, because I've been I started YouTube. I started doing some YouTube stuff, and I've been kind of thinking of what videos to make. And one of the videos is going to be probably like, what's the best baseball card to buy? What's the best basketball card to buy? Best soccer, best football, all along those lines. But and I think basketball is definitely in a place where it's much easier to figure out which card to get, because players don't have like pre-rookie cards the way that baseball does. But I even think that like rookie cards, just in general, with there being so many, it may be complicated to a point where people might just I don't know. I'm thinking the roadmap from someone to go from watching a highlight of a player to buying a card is maybe not exactly how it's going to go. And I don't know. And this may even be a concept that maybe people don't even think. It's just something that like I think this is what people believe could happen. It's what could happen. Like, this definitely could happen. But I think, like I said, I think the complications of which cards to buy, and it may even be just a baseball thing. Like, for basketball, you may see a Zion highlight, and then you want to buy a card. But I think the thing is, like, if you want to go buy the card, like, you really don't know which card to buy. And I feel like when I first got back into sports cards, I kind of tried to make content I was making it for myself and then for beginners, because I was a beginner at the time and I was making stuff as I learned it. And I feel like as I've kind of gone along the journey, I guess you could call it, of learning about sports cards, that my content has it's become more advanced, and I feel like sometimes I try and cater a little bit, like for TikTok. TikTok is definitely one that a lot of the videos that I'm talking about are beginner level stuff, but like with the podcast and then maybe with like Instagram and I mean Twitter, and I think it's even going to be, because the thing with YouTube is I want to create videos on YouTube that are searchable, because I think I did it with the blog for a little bit, and I don't think it exactly worked, and I'm not sure, and maybe I'm I'm not sure why it didn't exactly work. Like, I wrote a bunch of blogs thinking that people would search the player's name or the thing and they would find my blog, and that didn't really exactly work out. And I'm thinking that maybe I was just doing it wrong then, and I should have just been doing YouTube then and making videos about the blog, instead of writing blogs, I should have been making YouTube videos. So my theory is that I think we probably will see more people come into sports cards as larger outlets talk about them. And that seems fairly obvious, I would say, but I think the difference will be like Scott Van Pelt. I think a good example will be like Scott Van Pelt talks about, it's going to have to be integrated into the show a little bit more. And I don't know, I think it could happen. Like, I would say we're in the early stages of sports card content, because I think what's going to happen is sports cards is going to become very similar to fantasy sports. And I understand the concept of, well, what happens if the economy crashes? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's almost a cop-out for people who want to just want to be negative about the situation. Like, yeah, obviously, if the economy collapses, which it should have, I feel like it should have, honestly. Like, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure what happened here, but because of COVID, it probably should have collapsed. Like, it should be worse than it is, and I don't know why, but sorry. I think that sports cards and fantasy sports are going to be almost maybe just as popular as each other, because the way that in betting too, because you're seeing, I think if I'm ranking the mainstream popular culture of those three things, you've got fantasy sports, and then you've got sports betting, and then you've got sports cards. So fantasy sports basically integrated into society, like integrated into, like, and a good example is, like, you'll see a player, like mostly football, baseball kind of, but mostly football. Say they get like 10 receptions, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, they give the stats, but then they say, and that equals X amount of fantasy points. So, like I said, I think that is being integrated. You're also seeing ESPN and other outlets. I mean, Barstool is one outlet that definitely does this. I think they have some of the better gambling content. They're not good at gambling. They're most of the time they're pretty bad at it. But the content that they produce is integrating it more into everything. And I think, like I said, even ESPN is doing this. And I think big news that maybe is interesting that they didn't hold off on this news is that Bet360 just signed a sponsorship deal with the Tigers, the Detroit Tigers. So in the Detroit Tigers Stadium, you're going to see Bet360 ads and signage places, which I think that's the first major betting service to sign with a major American sports team. It's because if you watch any type of Premier League or Bundesliga or any type of soccer game, you're excuse me, you're seeing that signage all over the place. Like, even teams are sponsored by these betting services. So that's where I would say that's second behind fantasy sports, and then I think probably a distant third is going to be sports cards, obviously. And sorry, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so sports cards is definitely a distant third, but I think what could end up happening, and I think it's more or less it probably will happen more with basketball than it will with football and baseball, because cards for basketball are higher priced. So I think what could happen is the same thing that someone has a great game or they have a great highlight, and then they cut to maybe prices of cards, or they talk about cards. I don't exactly know where the integration is going to happen. And it could be that someone has to develop some sort of thing that's and it wouldn't even be a marketplace. Star Stock, I think, is a good example, but I don't know if they would be able to integrate that. But it would have to be maybe potentially a game or something where you can bet with cards, or you can like win like it almost would be, if you could integrate fantasy sports with sports cards, I think that would be a good way. Like if you like you play fantasy, but instead of using money, you use like a card, or like you win a card instead of winning money. Like you put in $5 and you have the potential, if you win, you have the potential to win, like, I don't know, like a Luka or something like that. And it's like, instead of where FanDuel and DraftKings are, instead of like you put $5 and you could, if you get first place, you could win $1,000. You bet $5, my goodness, and you could win like a Luka PSA 10 or something like that. Or, I mean, it could even be where you put up $5 worth of cards, and then that way, and then that's where you win, or like you win the pot of the cards or something like that. I don't know how exactly they would do it, but I feel like there's got to be some sort of integration into the system, because we've seen, I mean, not just from ESPN and all these places talking about the Andrew McCutchen card. There's people like Darren Ravel, and there's other like TMZ and other mainstream outlets are talking about the high prices of these crazy sports cards. And I don't think it's necessarily the high price of the sports cards that's going to bring people in. Like, that will be a factor. People will say, wow, $1 million for a sports card, and then they'll start doing research. But this is where the barrier, it's almost like the highlight. Like, they see the headline of the LeBron James card sells for $1 million, and then they go to search and they don't know where to even look. Like, they don't know where to start. Or the price barrier to entry maybe is a little bit too high. That also could be the case. Like, if someone wants a LeBron James rookie card, like, there's a bunch of different tiers of pricing they can choose, but like, if they want the tops, or they want the tops chrome, like, it's not everyone's going to have $1,000. Now, granted, I think sports betting people are going to look at that and say, wow, I bet $1,000 on a car, or I bet $1,000, or I bet $100 on a game. If I were to spend that $100 or $1,000, or however much you're betting on a card, you will never lose. You'll never lose all of your money like you would with a sports bet. And these are also some. Actually, I don't think I sent these tweets out either about sports betting, because I think Gary Vee was talking about. He had been talking about gambling and stuff like that. So hold on, I'm gonna try and find it. So here's some of the tweets that I talked about. So, like, sports cards right now, I think, is still very easy to make money. So that was one thing where I think gambling on sports is a little bit harder. I think, like, for the NFL especially, NBA kind of, because the NBA is tough because, like, you never know when someone's going to take a game off, and that's kind of an issue. But what you'll find is that right now, if you're getting into sports cards, like, I also saw an interesting tweet. I think it was Sports Card News tweeted this out. They said, like, their tweet was like something like, do big accounts talk about their wins and their losses? And I don't think I responded to the tweet, but in my head I was like, has anyone even lost? Like, has anyone lost? Like, I'd be interested to see someone who came into sports cards, bought one, and didn't make double their money. Like, if you bought Baker Mayfield, sure, but his cards are even up. If you bought Baker Mayfield at the beginning of last season and you sold at the end of last season, then you lost money. But, like, I can't think of anybody else really that, like, people bought into and that lost money. Like, if you're buying, and if you're smart about it, like, if you're not just buying into the hype of the cards, I just don't see how anyone could have lost any money. I'm going to be completely honest here. Like, so I don't think they're wrong about that tweet. Like, I definitely don't think that I talk about well, actually, I don't know. I think I talk about losses fairly frequently. Like, I would say I talk, but there aren't a lot of them. And that's the thing. Like, anybody, like, the only losses I have are selling too soon. Those are the biggest losses. Like, so I don't know. I'd be interested to see someone who came into sports cards, bought some cards, and was not successful, because I think the amount of people that did that, it cannot be more. I can't imagine there's more than a handful of people who did that. Like, granted that maybe somebody came in and they bought it, so maybe they came in with the investing mindset and they bought a bunch of cards, but it wasn't really that they didn't buy the cards because they were an investment. Maybe they just bought random cards, and that could be a loss. But like I said, I just from the beginning of the year until now, like if you bought any cards in January and sold them now, you would have double, triple your money. So I don't see how. I don't necessarily agree with that tweet, because I just don't, and it's not that I don't agree with that people maybe don't show their losses, because I don't think people do, but I just don't think there are that many people that really lost much, if I'm going to be completely honest. Now, to sports gambling stuff. So one of the major aspects about bettings versus cards is that the amount of time basically that's like required. And like when you're betting, you bet on a game, within a few hours, you know if you won money or you lost money. With sports cards, you're really looking at like at least a month, like maybe more, depending on how long you want to wait. Like if you're betting on futures, obviously you're waiting longer for sports gambling. But like the one thing that maybe that could be a reason sports gamblers don't get into sports cards is because they don't want to wait. Now, like I said, I bet on games, and obviously with no games, it's been an issue. And I follow some people on. Sometimes I follow people on Twitter, mostly these guys from Boston who are pretty good. But like, I've never. And the weird thing about sports gambling, and I do want to say this, there have been times where I have been pretty lucky, but I've never. And this is going to sound absolutely insane, and I don't know if you may not even believe me, but I put into my account $50. I put that into my account like three or 4 years ago, and from there I put in $50, and from there I've never spent any more money. I've never put in any more money. I've taken money out because I've won, but I've never spent any money. Now, I have gotten fairly lucky a couple times where when I first started out, I was just doing like parlays. I was like, whatever, I don't care. I did a 5-team college football parlay that was $5, and it cashed out $150, and I won it. So like right from there, that was huge. I also was down to, actually this is a funny story, I was down to my last $10 in the account. So I guess from there you could say maybe I lost money. But then I bet $5 on Julian Edelman to win the MVP of the Super Bowl, and I bet $5 on Gronk to win MVP of the Super Bowl. Now, for whatever reason, the odds I got were like plus 5,000 or plus whatever it was. I forget what the odds were. But from the $5 bet, I won $250. So that obviously helped. And then again, I was sitting around $200, and I bet $100 on a parlay for the Warriors to face the Raptors in the finals. And then when the Raptors were down 2-0, I bet on the Raptors again to win the series. I won both of those bets, and in total, that cashed out about $700. So I took some of that money out. So like I have some money in my account now, and I obviously haven't been using it. But like, from there, like, I don't know. I guess I've been sort of lucky from a betting perspective. Like, but I don't even really like betting a lot on games. Like, will bet maybe, like, the most I've ever bet on a game was like $50. And the least will be like $1 or $2. I mean, I'll usually do between $5 and $10 on games. And from there, like, it's just because I'll do it if I think I'm going to win, but like if it's just random, sometimes I won't. I don't know. It kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But either way, I think like the time period of when you can get the money is right away for most cases if you're a gambler or if you're a sports bettor, where with sports cards you are waiting a little bit longer. But the one major aspect I think of sports cards compared to sports gambling that I think may be intriguing to sports gamblers is the fact that you can cash out whenever you want with a card. Like, if you buy a card for $100 and it becomes a $200 card, you can cash out that $200, or you can wait, or you can, I guess cashing out or wait, there's only two options. Or you can wait and see if it goes up more, but like, I think that's one thing so you're never really losing any money by betting on sports cards, essentially. You can lose money, but you're never going to lose it all. Like the card, even if it doesn't go up in value, you can at least most of the time get at least 75% of your money back. I mean, Baker Mayfield, you probably could have lost 50% of your value if you were buying at the beginning of last season and sold at the end of last football season. But that's just kind of, I don't know. That's like buying into the hype. Like he was that hyped up guy at the beginning of last season and things didn't really work out. But so, and if I spent as much time, I think if I spent as much time in the sports gambling world as I did in the sports card world, I probably would be able to make roughly the same amount of money. If I don't know if this for sure. I probably would be able to make this, probably not the same, but the win percentage would probably be similar if I was spending as much time. And I don't know. And that's kind of a hypothetical, so I don't know for sure. But I'm just looking at it like, how are more people going to come in? And like, when are they going to come in? And I think it's going to have to be like, basically, people are going to have to learn about the card before they can come in, because the learning about the card, I think, is complicated. Because like I was saying, one of the YouTube videos is going to be which card for baseball should you buy, and Bowman is one of the cards is one of the baseball cards. But like explaining Bowman to someone who doesn't know about it is complicated. So. Like, and maybe even it may be the reason why the Topps flagship cards have gained a little bit of traction, because it's simpler. It's a rookie card everybody knows. But like with basketball, the rookie card you want to buy isn't available until the player is a rookie, like until they're in the league. So that also could be the scenario why basketball, if the growth of basketball and the growth of basketball sports cards kind of go in the same direction, that could be one of the reasons why basketball and basketball cards continue to grow faster than maybe some of the other sports. So that's basically all I've got for this episode. I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, StarStock. Go follow them at StarStock Market on Twitter and Instagram. Go follow me, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. Go leave a review on iTunes. I'd appreciate it. Thank you guys all for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.